Okay, let's move on to the first question. How do you manage the conflicts between the two different roles of being a ward councillor, representing the people in your ward, and being a planning committee member, representing the local planning authority in the wider council?
It is tricky, and understanding that conflict and the separation that's needed, I think, is key to being an effective and responsible member of a planning committee. The secret for me, if you like, is understanding it from the start. If you only realise it halfway through your first year, then you might find yourself already in all sorts of problems, which we'd all want to avoid. So going on to the planning committee in the first place is when you need to be aware of the different roles and different hats that you might wear, and the restrictions that come with each of them. So I think having that knowledge to begin with and checking that out with colleagues, both political colleagues and officer colleagues, I think is essential. A good tip is to make sure you've got a good working relationship with your ward colleagues, whether they're of the same political party as you or not, because if ward issues do come up that demand some councillor involvement or political, or certainly political with a large P response to them that are affected by planning applications, then it's always good to have ward colleagues who can step in and do that role for you, so you can maintain your position on the planning committee with the predetermination restrictions that apply, and let your colleagues go off and do the petition gathering, placard making, and the marches and all the rest of it. It might, of course, be that you have to take on that work because of election time and the strains of the political life. If you do, then please understand that you won't be able to take part in those items as a member of the planning committee, a voting member. So you might want to come along and speak up subjectively for your constituents, and that's absolutely fine, but that's a choice you'll have to make. And explaining that to the public is one of the key parts of that. That's so important, because we get it, we understand these restrictions, but often the public don't, and they say, why can't you sit on the planning committee and still make those promises, the over my dead body scenario that I definitely will oppose this come what may. People don't get that, and explaining that to the public is absolutely key, so that you can maintain your position within the community, you can still keep the respect of people you represent, but also effectively and legally undertake your role as a planning committee member. And having all those considerations, I think, is key to it.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Linda.
Thank you. I would totally endorse everything that Bill has said. It is a tricky one, and I have an extra tricky bit to it, which many of you will share, which is that I'm a single ward member, so I haven't got ward colleagues that can go out and do the spade work for me. It's very important that you let your residents know, if they approach you via planning application in your ward, that you sit on the planning committee, and then explain to them, because we sometimes take it for granted that people understand, and they don't. It's complex, and the legal situations are complex. So let them know that whilst you will listen to their views or opinions, you cannot give your opinions, or, as Bill said, actively campaign, sign petitions, etc., because this could be seen as predetermination, which would exclude you from representing them on the day, which they rightly expect you to do. And I found that residents, so long as it's properly explained to them, understand that. They don't always like it, but they understand it.
Indeed. Thank you. And you both have experience as being chairs of planning committees. How do you see that role as being different to being a planning committee member, and indeed balancing that with what you've already mentioned about your ward, excuse me, your ward roles as well?
The role of chair includes running a smooth, efficient meeting. You need to keep order and discipline. Be seen to be firm but fair. planning is a very emotive subject. People sometimes lose control and they're looking to the chair to keep things in order. And always remember that planning is open to the wider public and very much used for this. People watch the recordings, sometimes because they're involved, but often just out of interest to see how their councillors conduct themselves. And you will be judged by your conduct as chair, which needs to be professional and unbiased at all times. I'm sure Bill will expand on this.
Yeah, I mean, there's an awful lot in what Linda says that's correct there. My top tip would be, first of all, embrace the responsibility. It's a huge responsibility that you've got. In many ways, the planning committee is the shop window of your authority. It's where both investors and concerned residents come along to see how we conduct ourselves, to see how professionally we engage, and making sure that you portray your city, your town, your district, whatever it is, in the best light possible is such a huge responsibility. I would also say, make it your own. You won't have been made planning committee chair despite your ability. You will have been made planning committee chair because of your ability, and make sure that the committee works in a way that's conducive to all members, as broadly cross-party as you possibly can. Make it as inviting an atmosphere. People don't want to go into a meeting that's unfriendly, unwelcoming. That doesn't make for good business and good thinking that leads to the sensible decisions that we all want. It's your committee. You make the most of it. You put as best you can your stamp on it. You might not be there forever, so make sure it functions in the way that you see as conducive to good order and good decision making. That's the outcome that you're looking for. Safe, responsible, robust decision that will stand up to legal scrutiny on behalf of your authority. And you know the best way to deal with your members of whatever political party they might be to achieve that. And if you do that, I don't think you can go far wrong.
Thank you, Bill. It's really very clear on that. And finally, Linda, as a venerable planning committee member with sound judgment, what is your single piece of advice for peers across the country aspiring to be the best planning committee member they can be?
Thank you, Richard. Always difficult to ask a councillor for a single piece of advice. we've got over years, you build up so much advice, and I thought carefully about this one, and I tried to think of it very much not as a previous chairman of planning, which, as Bill has said earlier, you know, puts you in a slightly different position, but as a standard, very important planning committee member. So there's going to be more than one, but they're all relevant to it, and it's brief. I think first and foremost, read the papers carefully. You can soon tell, or we don't do, people hide behind their laptops and iPads now a little more, but when we had paper agendas, you could tell the ones that arrived totally like a newspaper that had never been touched. And you thought, well, that councillor could trip up here because they clearly haven't done their homework. Attend the site visits if you possibly can. And this is one of my big bugbears and causes embarrassment for the whole authority. If you're looking to propose refusal for something, make sure you have good planning reasons to support it. If need be, if you feel in advance that you have concerns, speak to the relevant planning officer. They're there to help you. But if you just stand up and say, I don't like it, Chairman, I wish to propose refusal, there's this awful silence. And it does then rather look as though the officers make the decisions, not the committee members, and the rest of your team won't appreciate it at all if you're not prepared.
Thank you, Linda. That's very helpful. And thank you, both of you. And I'm sure
Pleasure.
There's a lot to think about from what you said there. Thank you very much indeed.